I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training on it driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Right, Dave, your Google background and all, we got to put you through your paces here. So the thing is, I'm going to ask you for a ranking of 1 to 10 here, right? We've talked about Lionel Messi. We've got all the highly intellectual reasons as to why it may or may not happen from Simon Cooper and Sam Lee now this morning as well, as to whether he's going to go to Manchester City. Out of 10, the likelihood that Messi stays at Barcelona for you?
I would say 0. I just cannot see how... I just can't see how he can possibly have a future at the club after the way events have transpired over the last week. He clearly wants to go, and Barcelona need to make some changes at the club. They won't necessarily want Messi there if he is absolutely adamant that his time at the club is over. I would be shocked if in 6 weeks' time Lionel Messi is still a Barcelona player. I'm kind of sad the way that it's gone, because it's been such a glorious partnership for so long, going all the way back to his early teens. I think Messi and his advisors have made a real mess of this. They knew the wording of the clause whereby he had to notify Barcelona of his intention to leave by June 10th. And once they knew that the pandemic was going to be an issue, if they really had it in their minds that he wanted to leave, they needed to discuss it with the club then, because now we're into a real grey area. They're saying June 10th still remains in place. Barcelona saying, well, no, the season only ended a couple of weeks ago. That's when that's the day we'll be looking at. So I don't know. Unless Barcelona's end of season implosion has utterly dictated his thinking, and that was what triggered in his mind the fact that he wanted to leave. But it's gone very far now. He said he wants to go. I'll be very surprised if he's still there in a few weeks' time. Maybe not quite 0 out of 10, but 1 or 2.
Nathan gave that a 7 out of 10, if I'm right, earlier in the week. So there you go. Now, he did follow it up.
7 out of 10 that he is still a Barcelona player.
Yes, yeah. No, I think, to be fair to him, he did follow it up. You know what you're dealing with, Dave. He did follow it up with the chances of him going to Manchester City being 8 out of 10, I think. So, I mean, I don't know how all that stacks up. What about? If he is to move, I suppose, if we word it that way, if he is to move, City's chances are obviously 10 out of 10, right?
Yes. Well, what are his other alternatives? So there's
PSG,
Manchester City and PSG are really the only 2 clubs that can afford him. I don't see Inter having the funds to bring Leo Messi on the wages he's on, especially if there's a transfer fee involved. Do Messi's advisors genuinely believe that they can leave the Nou Camp for free, given that as of 2 months ago there was a 700 million exit clause in his contract? I doubt it. Maybe it might end up in court. Perhaps 2 clubs will come to an agreement, most likely the 2 clubs being City and Barca, and a transfer fee of somewhere around between 100 and 200 million is agreed upon. Look, we'll have to see how all that goes in the next few weeks, but you'll be almost certain that if he leaves, it is to City, yes, and the Guardiola link obviously being a major player, a major factor in that situation as well.
Do you get free lunch there?
In my house?
In Google.
You're giving an awful lot of free advertising to Google this morning.
Well, whatever. It could be Facebook, any of these modern technology companies. The Matt Doherty story, Dave, obviously continues. It looks as if it's almost certainly going to happen now. There's plenty of stories over the last last 24 hours about swap deals and how much money Bohemians stand to make out of this. It does look as if they will get their 10% out of it, out of the valuation of the player. And on that valuation, like, he's expected to go between 12 and 20 is what they're talking about here. The question maybe is, how much of a bargain is that? Like, if he was English, would you be looking at a multiple of that number?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how much of a multiple, but you're probably looking at doubling it. Like, he's a fullback playing for Wolves, and he's 29 years old. So he's closer to the end of his career than he is the start. Ask the question, is he a better fullback than Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who went for 50 million to Manchester United? The difference being that Aaron Wan-Bissaka has 5 years on him, or maybe it's even more. But are they very similar in terms of their ability at the moment? I would think so. I think no matter what way you dice this up, it's an incredible deal for Tottenham. Yeah. And I'm surprised Wolves haven't held out for a little bit more. I think he's going to settle in very quickly into that Tottenham team. I think he's just the kind of player that Jose Mourinho will like to work with. And I think it's brilliant for Doherty. Although you would hope that it doesn't upset the upward trajectory he's been on for the last 3 seasons, because I can't recall him playing badly for Wolves in that time. He turns in a 7 out of 10 performance pretty much every time he takes to the field. But he's now playing for a club that is going to be in Europe. Wolves just very narrowly missed out on playing European football, and maybe that, albeit it is the Europa League, maybe that was a tiny aspect of the thinking on Matt's behalf when he was deciding whether or not to make the change and leaving a club he's obviously incredibly settled at and incredibly happy with. But it's a new challenge for him, and you would hope that he's done very well for himself in terms of the personal terms, and we wish him all the best. I think it's a really good move for both parties. I think Wolves are the losers in this deal, because it's not like they've got a fee with which they can go out and replace Matt Doherty with a player of a similar or a better calibre.
Yeah, the Damien Duff stuff. Do you remember the Jose Mourinho, like Duff, Jose turned him into a defender, etc., etc. How do you see the relationship? How do you see Doherty developing? Maybe put it that way under Mourinho.
Well, it depends what sort of a lineup Jose Mourinho is going to put out there. Doherty's obviously been used to playing on the right side of the Wolves midfield in a wing back position where there are 3 central defenders in place. Jose has gone with that system sometimes, but often Tottenham are playing with a flat back 4, which means that Doherty will likely have to play in a right full back position. So, and a little different to what he's become accustomed to. But I don't see that being an issue for him. The full backs at Tottenham last season generally didn't get forward as often as, say, Doherty would have done in his wing-back position at Wolves. So whether it was Ben Davies or Serge Aurier, depending on which flank you're looking at, I would hope that Matt Doherty does get a chance to show what he can do going forward, because that's been a huge part in the reputation that he's built for himself at Wolves. He is great with the ball, and he's great getting ahead of the ball, and he's got a really good delivery with that right foot. So let's hope he gets to show that at Tottenham. I think Jose Mourinho will be looking to do exactly that, so hopefully that is the case.
The office is extremely quiet, by the way. I know it's a work from home thing, so you've just been allowed to go in and everybody else needs to stay at home. Is that what's happening?
Well, I
haven't seen one person walk around behind you, like.
I made the call and asked everybody just to stay away until I was happy that I was done with my job this morning and I could go home then, because that's the sort of clout that I carry in Google.
Last one here, right? There's a few bits and bobs, but we'll just do one more before we wrap in this, because I want to get a word with you on the golf. United obviously failed to buy Jadon Sancho now. Where do they need, in your view, to strengthen? And who needs to be replaced in that first 11?
I think they need to strengthen in several areas. They definitely need a centre-half to play with Harry Maguire. I'm a fan of Victor Lindelof, actually, because I think he's wholehearted and he'll give you everything that he's got every time he plays, but he's just not of that world-class quality that they do need, particularly with Harry Maguire, who is lacking in a couple of areas. And as we saw in the Europa League semi-final against Sevilla, when it really comes to the crunch, those two couldn't be trusted to get the job done. So a world-class centre-half is required. I do think they lack a really top-quality midfield player to play behind Pogba and Bruno Fernandes. And I think they need a centre forward as well. I don't know if Anthony Martial is good enough to be in that Lewandowski category, Van Persie category before he left the club, and be ranked up there with some of the top strikers that Manchester United have had over the years. He's had his best goal-scoring season, 23 goals, and at times he's looked really capable. But there's just always that nagging doubt I think a lot of people have with Anthony Martial. And then a lot of people talking, and people who are better educated than I in these matters, that they needed a right-sided attacking player, and that's where Jadon Sancho came in. That deal looks, if not dead in the water, close to it, because all the talk around it seems to have been diluted in the last couple of weeks. So I don't really know if that's going to happen. But they need to spend a lot of money, and they probably need at least 3 players. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been very clear on that. He has said that from the get-go, that he knows they have to bring 3 or 4 players in, and they'll only be brought in if they're improving on the quality that they have there already. I haven't seen them being linked with anybody of real consequence in the last couple of weeks since the talk on the Sancho deal went quiet.
All right, just before we wrap, deal or no deal, I see that Vera Pauw said that Denise O'Sullivan, one of the standout players of the Irish team, is to join Brighton and Hove Albion on loan from North Carolina Courage. So that's happened as well. But that's this morning's deal or no deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it?